Hey, thank you so much for everyone tuning in. Today, we have really two great topics to talk about. One is the upcoming MCP spec release and what it means to MCP developers, what it means to MCP clients. What do you need to do if you're building an MCP server? What are the changes do you need to do right now? And we're also going to talk about how does authentication in general is being hardened by the spec itself, and what is the community overall doing to improve the enterprise authentication controls, both for MCP servers, MCP clients, basically provide overall better security posture for enterprise organizations. Let me do a quick check if the stream is going through fine. We have people joining in from YouTube and LinkedIn. Let me make sure everything is fine. Give me a second.
I think Ravi, we can't hear you if you're
Yeah,
speaking.
no, I was just making sure that stream is going through fine. Yeah, everything seems to be fine. Yeah, sorry guys. So yeah, today I have with me two of the best people who can speak about both MCP authentication, authorization, enterprise security. I have with me first of all Prathamesh. Prathamesh is a good friend. He's the CEO of MCPJam. Of course, before joining as CEO, he was working on MCP and API at scale at Asana. And he has seen what scaled MCP server looks like, what happens when a lot of people try to use their MCP server in their own agents. And he was able to successfully migrate Asana's MCP server into its own authorization server. So he has seen the auth side of it, not just the MCP server scaling side of it. So I'm so excited to have you here, Prathamesh. Welcome to the webinar.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And super exciting to see what Scalekit's been up to. And I think MCPJam and Scalekit have been collaborating for a little bit now. And yeah, you guys are always on top of stuff, especially when it comes to the auth side. And yeah, exciting to see your gateway functionality now too. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. And I have Sohail with me. Sohail is senior developer advocate at Okta, predominantly working on IDJag and cross-app access. It's funny, 1 year to the day, we were talking about, hey, we need to do something about cross-app access. The spec needs to evolve. There needs to be a lot more adoption in the industry, and it's serendipitous to actually doing this conversation exactly 1 year before we met and spoke about the same event. He's phenomenal. He's a creator and maintainer of so many open source projects. He's passionate about making authentication and agent identity easier for developers to actually understand. So I'm glad that Sohail is here to talk us more about how does enterprise authentication get better with the introduction of the XAA spec, and how is the community evolving the spec, and where is it going, and what needs to be done if you want to adopt XAA right now. I'm excited to hear all about it from Sohail. Sohail, thank you so much for coming on the webinar.
Thank you so much, Ravi. I think we can say the life has come full circle now, and yeah, it's really great to see people in the same industry and in the field are coming together to support this spec and helping adopt on wide level. So yes, great to be here with Prathamesh and Ravi, both of you.
Nice. So let's get started. Let's talk about the big elephant in the room. In less than a week now, the according to the MCP maintainers themselves, the biggest spec upgrade for MCP ever is coming out. So yeah, before we talk about all the changes and all the things that MCP server developers and MCP client developers need to think about, so Prathamesh, what is your initial reaction about this spec release that's happening?
Yeah, it's pretty exciting stuff. I think, you mentioned some of my background. Happy to just dive into it to sort of, bake the foundation here for why I have the reaction I have. Yeah, so at Asana, I was the tech lead for the API and developer platform team there. So owned our MCP server platform, our OAuth authorization server, and our public REST API. And my onboarding to MCP was actually our very public security incident in June of last year. So not too long after the spec came out, and not too long after Anthropic was like, hey, let's release an MCP server together. And one of the biggest challenges I found post security incident is how do we make sure that our enterprise data privacy, legal security teams feel good about our data flows and who's connecting, why they're connecting. Because in this, MCP, the protocol itself is not, this might be a hot take, is not that complicated. What's complicated is the systems that we're trying to interact with across the client, the server, the resource server, the auth server, who is a user, who is an agent, and who is what data are we exposing to who and where, right? So when this enterprise managed auth extension first came out in draft, I was like, finally. I think one of the bullet points that maybe is less seen, that what I was really excited about, is actually the distinction between personal and enterprise accounts, because I'm happy to dive into it later. That matters a lot for data flows, who has access to what data, and how these enterprises actually maintain their proprietary data and don't expose it to maybe model providers that have an incentive to train on data to make their models better. So I'm going to come at it from that angle. Very excited about that. Oh my God, session IDs were a pain to deal with. Now, happy to dive in there a little bit more too, but they were a pain to deal with. Now it's a little bit interesting to actually maintain user context and state and see how to actually make things good for an end user. But at least we don't have to deal with sticky sessions and the session and state handling that we had to deal with. So between those two, those are pretty exciting things. If we can make tasks async and actually useful, that could be pretty awesome. And yeah, there seems to be a realization here that there were many features in the protocol. What are actually used and what are actually useful? Let's drive towards that future together. And that feels like a big shift here in this version.
Yeah. And Sahil, how are you looking at it from the changes that are positive changes, I would say, that are happening in the authentication side of the MCP server spec itself? Like Prathamesh was talking about, the evolution of auth inclusion in the spec has been patchy. First it was non-existent, and then there were bad references. Bad is a strong word, but there were slightly complicated references, and then it kind of streamlined to standardized OAuth flows, and then there was DCR, which is extremely, I would say, two sides of the coin. Some people said DCR is good, some people said DCR is bad, but now it evolved into CAMD, and now we're talking about XAA. So speak about this evolution of the auth itself from Okta standpoint. How do you see it?
Yeah, I think we acknowledge that when initially auth itself for the MCP, we as a community acknowledge that it was not done well. There has been numerous feedback coming up to the MCP community on why this is so problematic, why this can be done, why this can't be done in an easy way. But I think, yeah, we have came very far here. Starts from making it correct, and then we started with implementing proper OIDC flows and everything. With this new update, I'm very much excited because we have fixed a couple of things. At least the specs has fixed a couple of things that community has been asking. Primarily was the issuer identifier where there was a complaint that, okay, one client is connecting to multiple MCP servers with multiple authorization server. How do we solve this problem? And then again, client type aware registration things and CIMD. Yes, I would say CIMD is overall win for us because it has been there for the 10 years and it was widely accepted as well. More than that, when I think the contribution towards enterprise auth spec, that is a very game changing here. That was the exact problem, or you can say blocker enterprises had when they were giving an access of agent to their 2,000 employees. How can they go on it? I think, yeah. So with that being said, XA is really helping in this. And we have seen, being from the IDP side, that how our partners and apps have said that, okay, this is going to help us to drive more adoption as well. So yeah, I think exciting thing coming up, and we will continuously going to help the community on making this spec much more better on at least on the authorization side.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, right? And Prathamesh, you summarized really well on some of the key topics that you're observing in the MCP upcoming spec release. If I have to take my own kind of underlying summary of what is happening in this release and why this is one of the biggest releases is, I think this is firmly going towards what can be the base of the spec without having to change drastically for the next 12 months or so, because that's what even the maintainers are saying, that every change going forward will go through a deprecation notice of a year. So that means they really want to make sure that everything is locked down in this as best as they can. And the second point is, I think they're driving firmly towards being compliant with as many existing standards as possible. One is like making ISS feel mandatory. Again, that is moving closer towards what is already a widely used practice in the OAuth world. Adopting JSON schema standard rather than creating their own thing. Making MCP servers stateless. Again, all of this is meant to make MCP servers scale easy, stick with the existing standards easy. So I really, really love this update for so many reasons. As an MCP server developer, as a platform that helps other developers build MCP servers, as an MCP client as well, it just makes things so much easier for us. But let's start with one thing that you mentioned, Prathamesh, which is 6 sticky sessions. I can't tell you how often I've had, kind of hair-pulling experiences with, hey, why is one call working but the subsequent call doesn't work? I'm sure this is an even bigger problem for an MCP client like you, because your customers will be using MCPJam to connect to hundreds of MCP servers, and each MCP server behaves differently. You need to manage the sticky sessions. You need to remember what is the session ID. So tell me about your experience on this. I'm sure you have so many war stories about it.
Yeah. The war stories are definitely more on the Asana side and less so on the MCPJam side, luckily. Yeah, so session IDs, when you initialize the connection between client and server, that handshake, you don't really know what that session ID is semantically, right? Like the client really has full control, really the host application has full control over how it spins up those clients, what those clients mean to that host application. Yeah. So for ChatGPT, like, hey, is a session one chat with one user, or is it one user across 3 different chats? It used to be that we just didn't know. And this was back when, hey, like ChatGPT just released the apps SDK like October of last year. There were lots of, I'd imagine the absurdity of problems that we have nowadays is much lower than maybe what we had like later last year. But even as of like a few weeks ago, I was hearing customer complaints basically about, hey, we have these session IDs. We maybe have like a 30% confidence that this one particular user and this series of tool calls is actually related to one chat session. But it turns out that, hey, this one session ID doesn't really map that well to what we think is the same session here. What's going on here? And so when you lose that semantic meaning of what a session is, and it's really just protocol fluff, okay, this is great. Now I have to make sure this user is always attached to this stored state that I have in my background. So let's just use Cloudflare as an example. Hey, durable objects. Those are pretty awesome, right?
Yeah.
Distributed, each of the objects store its own state. Now I have to make sure that this user and this session ID all route to the same durable object, and I have to clean up that durable object afterwards. But if I wanted to make some like high level like analysis on a user behavior, or like I want to see my production analytics for what the user is doing, I don't have a clear idea of what this user session really means.
Yeah.
And so even if the protocol was stateful, a lot of the benefits of you having that state were like moot, right? Like in a lot of ways. Now, I mean, we can dive into like what is a user session at this point without state. I feel like there are ways that this new spec are trying to coach us into saying, here's how you maintain state now. Just please pass back parameters back and forth. Which makes sense, but also it's like now it's at least it's more clear that it's in your control that you're maintaining the state, but you're still relying on an LLM to do the state passing. So that's interesting. I'm a little curious about that. What are your reactions there, Ravi?
So to be honest, I like the move. The only reason because more often than not, LLMs are good at doing it. They kind of follow the trail if you ask them nicely enough. And the way I look at it is, hey, this is not really critical for an MCP client to MCP, an MCP server to connect with each other, integrate with each other, talk to each other. The way I see it is, this is still an optional information, and we are losing a lot of good things because of session ID. Like it's harder to scale vertically. It's harder to scale immediately if you want to. There's a lot of code that clients need to make to manage the session properly. Like one of the things that you spoke about, like when does a session expire? Is it a time-bound session? Is it an activity-based expiry? What does it even mean, right? Like, and what separates two different sessions clearly, right? If I start a conversation half an hour back, half an hour later I come back and then restart the conversation, does it become a different session or the same session? So again, I think it's a very artificial construct that left over from the SSE version of the MCP spec. But I think it's a great move just to make the whole MCP spec stateless. And one of the things that Prathamesh, you also touched upon is what about long-running tasks, right? The durable tasks. There is this official, the tasks itself became official as part of the spec, which was previously an extension. I think again that's a great welcome move, and that makes the MCP clients easier to track what is happening. What is your take on that?
Yeah, the task extension.
Yeah,
I think the task extension was useless beforehand.
Yeah.
Like I'm just that was, no one wants sync tasks. Also, if you look at the features being there in the protocol is one thing. Whether they get adopted is really the closest driver for like, okay, was there enough like education around this thing to make it obvious what this is? Was there enough education to say, hey, this thing is useful for MCP server developers or client developers? And I think the resounding answer here, I don't think anyone will disagree with me here, is that tasks were not. They weren't adopted by the clients. They weren't adopted by server developers, even if they were like, oh, I see like a future here where maybe I don't have to think about agent-to-agent interactions with another protocol. There's something here with MCP that we're trying to stumble on. But I think the core of it was wrong. I think I'm glad that the shift to async is just the right shift, right? You were mentioning this with stateless. You were mentioning it's essentially the same thing with tasks now. It's like, hey, we landed on, I think, the core being async is the right core. I'm actually kind of excited for tasks. I think this could be a great stepping stone for agent-to-agent interactions. And this is necessary for it. MCP is already the protocol that's winning on the adoption front for integrations between LLM applications, and it's only it's not too far off to say that this could be the lead agent-to-agent protocol as well. So that's pretty exciting. What are your
it's interesting. It's interesting you say that the adoption of MCP has been crazy, both in consumer world and also in enterprise world, right? I think there's a lot of like suspicion, interpretation in the enterprise mind, like what is this MCP adoption? It's like a wildfire, and I don't know visibility. I don't know what's happening. There is a lot of security issues, and there are a lot of security companies that came and tried to solve just MCP security and MCP authentication and MCP authorization as a problem, because the problem is real and the problem is big. And I see that the MCP community and the MCP maintainers have kind of raised the bar of authentication and authorization by baking them into the spec in the right way. And the upcoming extension of XAA is I am definitely excited about, because it adds a lot of enterprise security. It gives a peace of mind. It gives visibility. It gives governance to enterprise IT teams. So hell, I want to understand more about. Forget about MCP for a minute, but then let's just talk about, hey, what is this XAA about? Who should think about adopting XAA? Is it for everyone? Is it only for enterprise customers? If you can educate us on the overall ecosystem of XAA readiness and the XAA technical concepts itself, that'd be great.
Sure. Very exciting thing here, because I think we get this question a lot: who is XAA actually is for? Okay, XAA involves three parties here. So one side of it becomes the requesting app side. Consider you are using Claude or Cursor. That becomes your agent, which is requesting access to the multiple resources out there. And then you have a layer which calls identity layer here, which is responsible for proving who you are and what. Basically, initially, the good thing was IDP was never responsible for what you can do. It was always about who you are, right? And then the another side of it, which is again a resource app here. So as an employee in the company, you're probably using 20 plus apps, and this gives multiple every time, right? So what used to happen before is that if in a current way as well, if you want to do OAuth, if you want to connect to any resource app, you're doing OAuth, and you get the consent screen, which probably has over scopes and 200 grand possible. And that once you approve it, I'm sure not everyone reads that. We have seen this like that. So, and you go and you just click approve it, and that grant is saved in the database of that SaaS. Okay, your IT admin doesn't have any visibility of that grant. Neither can audit nor can look at it. And that was a problem. When we as an industry adopted SSO, and we solved that sign-in problem, but we never solved that app-to-app connection problem.
Exactly.
That's where exactly this XAA and enterprise, you can say, auth coming into the play. When agent came up, we didn't have agent before, right? We, at least if we talk about 5 or 6 years, we didn't have agent. Agent came up and they multiplied this problem with everything. Like right now, your agent is accessing probably 60 apps. Your IT admin doesn't have any visibility. And that problem we wanted to solve by switching, or you can say by shifting that delegation, or we can say authority to the IDP. So this is where your IDP becomes a central layer, a governance layer, which allows your agent or requesting app to access what you can do. Which is still better than managing 2,000 grants, right? Because one single kill switch on the IT admin, which is thoroughly reviewed and added, is much better than revoking your 200 grants sitting on the other data, sitting on the app side. So that's what makes it promising. With this gets added to the MCP, we have seen there is a confidence on enterprises. We have seen our apps that are saying, okay, now we can let our employee use this in multiple MCP servers, because now we can see what they're actually doing. So I think is that
No,
suffice to your question.
no, that's fantastic. So, I think one thing that I really liked how you summarized is, hey, previously identity providers like Okta or Google Workspace or Ping Identity or any of these Microsoft Enter ID, they predominantly focused on what the identity of the user is, whether it is human or
Yeah.
non-human, and
Yeah.
what applications or what resources can they access so that they can grant a token for the resourcing application to act on behalf of the particular user. But if one application in the same organization needs to talk to another application, there's absolutely no way, and there's no visibility either. And the existing pattern was every user, basically, first of all, these two applications need to be integrated with each other.
Yeah.
And every user in that organization has to say, hey, I approve Slack to talk to my Notion, or I approve Slack to talk to my Gmail, and vice versa, right? Imagine in a 2000 employee organization, everyone having to do it.
Yeah.
It's a security nightmare. And like you said, the enterprise orgs don't have visibility into which application is talking to which application either, right? If they want to kind of intervene and then do something about it. And XA kind of solves this pretty awesome way, both by centralizing the identity delegation and access delegation,
Yeah.
giving visibility to the security teams, and also giving control over which employee can access what application, not just that, which is what SSO and SAML were solving earlier, but also which
Yeah.
application can talk to which application on behalf of this user. I think the simplicity of the spec is brilliant, and the fact that it improves an end employee experience when a new employee joins a large organization, they open Claude, and then all their 50, 60 applications are already connected. They just need to start using an agent or a cloud application
Yeah.
or an MCP
Yeah.
Jam to start testing their MCP servers. So, Prathamesh, how is your experience implementing support for XA?
Yeah. It's kind of awesome. Everything that you just said is almost a dream scenario for everyone involved here. It's like, oh, the end user, oh, it's way less friction for you. Now you don't
Yeah,
have to maintain user auth across 50 different MCP servers. Awesome.
yeah,
And just that by itself is enough for someone to go, yes, I want that. But then we didn't even talk about how like enterprise governance is now a thing, right? Like consent, like Sohail was saying, isn't governance, and there's a big difference there. You're talking about our XAA and how MCPJam might be implementing it. So we have an XAA debugger, and Ravi, you're familiar with our OAuth debugger. Sohail, are you familiar with our OAuth debugger?
Oh, yes.
Okay,
I mean,
sweet.
why not?
I mean, yeah, fair. There's a sequence diagram that. So actually, I was a user of MCPJam before I came in as CEO, right? So I used it at Asana, forced all my developers to use it. Everyone loved it, and the killer feature for me for MCPJam was actually the OAuth debugger. Like it was a sequence diagram. I can see end to end. Hey, what does a client see? What about the agent? What does the server interact with the resource server, authorization server? And I can see it step by step. XAA, for an MC server developer, there isn't much that you have to think about, which is really nice.
yeah,
For a client developer, for the auth server owner, a little bit different. But
yeah,
now the IDP is in the mix, which is great once everything's configured. But to get it configured, now there's another entity you have to worry about now, right? So that sequence diagram is even more useful now with cross app access. I think it's OAuth is already so confusing to everyone. I don't think I'm being like, I don't think that's a hot take. It's like, yeah, OAuth is confusing, but especially when you're dealing with clients and agents and then now an IDP, it's like, okay, who needs to worry about what and what do I need to worry about? I don't know if sharing my screen is the right thing to do here, but yeah, having a sequence diagram to really walk through the XAA flow is really nice. And even to provision your own like test IDP and test auth server, if you're like a server developer, is interesting. If you're an auth server developer, you need to make sure you have an MCP server that's just there as a reference, and also maybe a test IDP. And so that's like, okay, now you've got to spin up these two other entities to make sure in isolation my thing works, right? So testing the thing is difficult. XAA debugger makes it much easier, hopefully, but I love cross app access. And I'm super excited about it for actually probably reasons that we haven't mentioned, because it has more to do with enterprise adoption of the thing, but not for IT admins.
Yeah.
It's for high level data flows and
Yeah.
who owns what data. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to like bridge the conversation somewhere else. So Ravi, I'm going to hand it back to you if that's somewhere we want to go,
No.
or
So
maybe there's something else we can
yeah,
talk about.
no, definitely. I think we should go deeper on this maybe at a later time. But
Mhm.
let me tell you this, right? We were heavily leaning on MCPJam's early beta releases to test our own support for XAA. So yeah, very thankful for all the great work that you did to make our job easier. Uh, but Suhail, coming back to you, there's a big question mark here, which is IDJAG, which is the underlying OAuth spec on which the XAA is built on top of. Let's call XAA as a popular name, but IDJAG is the official spec nomenclature. But how many applications today support IDJAG? And isn't that one of the hurdles that we need to cross as a community to convince as many application vendors to implement support for IDJAG so that the true vision of XAA itself, realizes. And what is the state
Mhm.
right now? How are you tracking that? Because you are one of the biggest advocates for XAA and IDJAG spec. How is reception for this spec across application vendors that you're working with, and how is it coming along? How are you handling that?
Yeah, I think I'll answer this question in two parts. The the major question, or you can say major concern, is about how do we support, how do my authorization server will understand this new type of grant, which is an ID jam, right? That part gets a little bit tricky for authorization server because they say it's a cost for us to support this new ID jam, kind of,
Yeah.
So, but the beauty of cross-up access is like it built on two existing specs. So we have token exchange here, already RFC 8693, and then we have a JWT period grant.
Yeah.
If your authorization server is already supporting, which is most of them right now, what we have done the research, a lot of good number of authorization server is supporting that grant. Name it Zoom, Google as well. They for them it's a bit easy because then you are just like validating the identity which is given by IDP here. Okay, so that is the cost for resource authorization server on the one side.
Yeah. Yeah.
Back to this requesting app side, if you're a requesting app developer, consider an example Slack accessing to Zoom. For Slack is actually technically nothing. It just make sure that you implement getting the ID jack from IDP allowed per your policy wise and sending it to that authorization server. Well, if that part is taking place, that's done, which is already most of them doing great.
Yeah.
When we initially started working on this on the adoption side, when I was specifically talking to to folks out there, we were able to simplify with the tools. One of the question was, do we have enough of tools or resources available to test this, to support this? And that led us to build the playground XA.dev and good documentation on Okta. And we are sitting actually with the ISV partners. Now, coming down to the second question, how it is working. On the spec side, it is already in the draft state. That means it is already adopted by OAuth working group. It has been revised 4 times this now, so you can say that it is very close to getting observed by people and coming up on the getting comfortable with that. The big thing that happened to us within last 2 months is Anthropic came and said, "Yeah, we will going to support this."
Yeah.
So today, this moment, Claude Code and Claude Cowork already supports this if you are enterprise customer with them. And then there are more than 25 plus apps who are supporting, including MCPJam and Scalekit as well. If I can mention that, name Asana, Zoom, all of them are currently in the work to support this, which we are probably thinking of, or you can say, if I can give you the timeline, probably by September we will have a lot of apps visible with the cross-app access filter on Okta itself. So it is definitely moving. The needle is definitely moving. If you are probably the one who wants to know XA, and if you have a question, do we need to support it today and what do we need to do, there is enough amount of resources. You can also connect with us, and you don't need to wait for the ink to get dry. Right? Do not think of that, okay, once the spec gets stable and we will implement it. I think players like what we have already, Fortune 500, are already investing it, so that gives us a good clarity on how this is moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think thanks so much for that update, Sohail. I mean, I'm personally looking forward to seeing more and more, larger applications building first party support for XAA, because it just makes things easier for everyone. It's not just necessarily the enterprise customers and enterprise IT admins, but as an end user, it makes my job easier for me to connect to one agent, and then have all my applications automatically be available. So, and Sohail, just advise a little bit more. Like, this is also one of the incoming questions. How do you see XA playing role in kind of creating per user access control and also per tool access control? Because again, predominantly we are talking about identity providers just stopping at, hey, can this user use this application or not? Right? XA is just automating it. And XA is saying this application can also talk to this application. But then what about the roles and permissions and access control? Like, does XA have a role to play here? How are you thinking about it from the Okta point of view?
Yeah, I think, well, XA does a lot of things here when it comes to when your one app is talking to another app. But I would say it does have some limitations, and we can acknowledge that. And then it's good to acknowledge that as well. There is a question, is it one or all? If the question is it one or all? I would say there is a scope of improvement for sure. But yeah, right now, your IT admin is deciding what kind of scopes you can work on that. If we go to fine grain, whether which tool can be accessed using which scope, even I think MCP is also still working on it. Right? There's no way of going fine grain with, okay, which tool can access what. If you have that scope and you are calling that tool, either you will get it passed or you'll get it failed. That's how things are working on. But yeah, XA really works when you have when your token have good scopes, when your IT admin has given a great policy that only this app can be allowed to talk to this one. And if you are playing in that bubble, it works really well. But yes, on a fine grain side, I think there are scopes of improvement. I think we as a community will going to for sure work on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the ways that we can also make it more secure for enterprise customers is just beyond saying that this app can access to this application. If we can also say, hey, this app can access only these parts of this application, again, at a control layer, because Slack may have no need to, for example, remove users from a Notion workspace. So they wouldn't need that scope at all. All they may need is creating a page, updating a page, and stuff like that. So it'll be more easier for IT admins to configure and control, right? And so I think this is fantastic, right? I'll just do a recap. We did a great introduction to the upcoming changes in the MCP spec. We spoke about XAA authentication and authorization. Now we're going to move on to talk about MCP server developers, MCP client developers. What are some of the things that they need to keep in mind? Because most of the questions that we received around, if I'm building an MCP server, I'm doing this, is this the right thing to do, or how do I do this, or where do I do this? I just want to give more light from your collective experience on, how can we help more MCP server developers do a better job at building great MCP servers, so that MCP client's job is easier. So Prathamesh, let's talk about this. Like, one of the unstated goals of MCPJam is to make it easier for developers to build world-class MCP servers, because that's how I look at it. Like, whenever I'm working on a POC MCP server, the first thing that I do is I connect to MCPJam, because it tells me exactly where the problems are and I know how to fix them. I usually treat MCPJam as a model MCP client, right? So what from your experience, what are some of the things that you would want MCP server developers to keep in mind, while building their MCP servers?
Yeah, that's thanks for the lead up there. MCP server developers need to think about a lot, right? I mean, I was on the other side of this. You've built your own MCP servers.
Yeah.
There's a lot that goes into building out your MCP server. Even if we start with, hey, I have an API. I want to expose that API to agents. Cool, that's a step. Authorization is complicated. Okay, you got to make sure that you work correctly across clients, because maybe your users are now in ChatGPT, Claude, Cursor, etc. So huge benefit of MCP is it's a great distribution channel for you, right? Like you want users to use your thing wherever they are, whether it's Claude Code or Claude Desktop or Cursor, right? So being able to expose your functionality of your product really easily is huge. To go along with that, you got to make sure that you're following the authorization nuances between those clients, where client developers also pick and choose the capabilities that they want. So now you got to make sure that you are resilient to whatever capabilities that client wants to choose. If you want to go to like, can I use .dev, you can easily just see what capabilities clients support and which ones they don't. And it's all over the place because there are so many capabilities there. So effective, like I think the word that we're landing on, that you're teeing up here, is like, what does effective mean for an MCP server developer? And working correctly is really step one. And working correctly across clients, making sure you are secure, making sure you're compliant with the protocol is step one. Now with this new release, there's a lot to do here to make sure you're compliant for this new spec release. I'm not going to understate that. This is a pretty massive change, and you'll have to weather the storm here, hopefully with some production guides to help you out. And at least for cross-app access, you're able to integrate with your own IDP, and it's really the auth servers developers and the client developers that have a little bit more to do to support cross-app access, which is great. Like MCP server developers shouldn't have to think very much about it, which is awesome. But effective also means, hey, how well do you actually support the user flows that you care about, right? Like maybe if you're building a to-do app, you got to make sure that users are easily, quickly able to fetch the functionality they need to handle their to-do app. What does that mean? It means, are you effectively handling all those user prompts? And how do you make sure that you're effectively handling those user prompts with low latency and low token consumption, ideally? And that's like a step that we haven't gotten to, mostly because there aren't great testing frameworks to go help us do this, right? Like when an agent is in the loop, you now have another variable to now have to test against. And it's not just the model, it's the harness and the client capabilities alongside that too. So if you want to make sure your MCP server is effective in ChatGPT and also in Claude with low latency, low token usage, but also enough breadth to handle the user tasks that you care about, how do you do that? And there's these testing philosophies that I think I'll probably write about and share a little bit, maybe on like YouTube and stuff. Maybe I'll bring you guys on and just talk and deep dive into this. But we've talked about unit testing, integration testing as developers, evals as a primitive, end-to-end testing with a user prompt to did a thing happen. How do you make sure those work cross-client with all the capabilities in mind here? So there's a lot for an MCP server developer to test and fight regressions and make sure you're effective for. But yeah, hopefully MCPJam and resources like etsa.dev and all these debugging tools are just stepping stones to get MCP servers to just be more effective and good. And right now, we're not there, but I think we'll get there. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all the things that you spoke about, Pragnesh. Like first, the MCP servers, whoever is building the MCP server right now, they need to make sure that it is working. It is working consistently. It is working consistently across all clients. It is working consistently across all clients all the time. And then you would focus on, hey, what is the token usage of a client loading this MCP server? Are you front loading all the tools? Is there some sort of a tool discovery? How are agents able to effectively use your MCP server to get a job done? Are you using evals to test for those hypotheses? Yeah, I think you summarized everything really well, Pratmesh. And these are the things that, in that order, they need to think about the security of the MCP servers. And this upcoming MCP spec release is actually making things easier for developers, even though there are a lot of things that they need to do. It's still making it easier to scale once they get that right. Sohail, I have a few questions that I'm getting, especially around Okta and XA. Let me pick one or two of those while I have you here. We can definitely answer most of these questions offline if required, but some of the questions, again, the theme is around this, right? They're already using Okta for their workforce identity, and they're thinking about now, how do I extend that to, workloads and agents, and how do I make sure that my Okta can act as a central orchestration layer for all connections and integrations between MCP clients and MCP servers? How do I manage access control in Okta? I think if you want to take a couple of minutes to talk about or point people to the right resources in Okta, it'll be really helpful for these people.
Sure. So I think the question also revolves around, okay, how we manage this new identity type which is coming up. We at Okta, we understand that we need to treat AI agent as first-class identity. And that makes a lot more job easy here. So yes, I mean, we have, you can say if you're already using Okta, you are going to see AI agents is getting added into the universal directory. The moment you add AI agents, that solution is already there. How can you get it is basically if you are already talking to one of the Okta representative or want to get that feature flag enabled, you can talk to them, or otherwise you can just come on our support channel and we can help you. But yes, if in your environment, if there are AI agents which is running and you want to govern the access, you can add them as a first-class identity. We allow you to even assign owners to that. So it's like with the token exchange, you have now act claim, which can tell, okay, this is an AI agent which is working on behalf of this person. So we have that functionality enabled as well. And as your AI agent needs an access to the multiple resources. So if you as a user are probably assigned to multiple applications, your AI agents also get assigned to the multiple applications, which allow your AI agent to do the federated access to all the rest of the resources. You can say resource apps here in the case of XA. So yes, if your authorization server, if the apps that you are using and your authorization server supports JWT Grant, Understand, ID Chat, you can actually go and try it out. So that is already there. And there are documentations available, so you can reach out to Okta team and look at the documentation. And if still feel that something is needed, we are here for you.
Fantastic. So I'll just follow up that answer with one more question because it's very relevant. So you spoke about how enterprise organizations can configure MCP servers, so it gives them visibility. But then there's an interesting question. So how do we solve for MCP governance problem when there are shadow MCP servers in the enterprise? How can they manage and track these shadow MCP servers where no one knows what they are and who is using them? Why are they using them? Are they good ones, bad ones? So is there any solution that you guys are working with or partnering with to solve this particular problem?
Yeah, I think this is a nightmare for most of the security review team when they find out there are employees who are working on and have shadow MCP servers. So we understood this problem as well. The first thing that you will do is discover them. And there are, if you're probably using agent frameworks or if you're deployed that agents, find out that, and you get an option to configure them at Okta with the client credentials that you have with those MCP servers. So the first thing is block the access for the unnecessary and not needed, and map them to the Okta so that you can have a visibility of how many MCP servers are there. And then that AI agent can be actually connected to that MCP server. So you don't have to build the problem of, okay, how can I solve that authorization problem for the MCP server here? So your agent is connecting to resource application, your service accounts, your MCP servers are there, gives you a centralized visibility and exactly on which user is actually doing what. So that agent, as we made it that any agent is listed at Okta, has to have an owner. And that owner could be a group, can be an individual, can be a specific group or the organization that needs to have that shows, okay, who's actually working on behalf of. So yes, and make sure there is a visibility, like add this discovery and map it at the central layer, and that will make your job most easy. At least that's how the CISOs are looking at this problem, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a few more questions. Hopefully we have more time for the questions. But Prathamesh, this is around the MCP apps and MCP spec. So I hope you're the right person. So again, I'm combining multiple questions into one theme. Basically, fundamentally, it's about, where do you see the support for MCP apps going? And if I'm building an MCP server, should I think about building support for MCP apps as well, kind of give a graphical interface to the MCP server as well, and not just text-based responses and things like that. So what is your hot take on that?
Yeah. So MCP apps is awesome. I'm glad that it's a formal extension now. It's already been fairly formalized though, because every major AI client that has released an app store or plugin store is backed by MCP apps. So that's the ChatGPT plugins, the Claude connectors, the Cursor apps. There are like 7 or 8 major AI clients that all support MCP apps. And this is huge for MCP server devs. So if you have an MCP server and you're exposing it and you want to get access to users in those AI clients, which is, a pretty large distribution channel for your product, you probably want to make sure that your brand, your reputation, your product is front and center for the user. If you have an MCP server that, delivers data, you are improving the experience of these users in those AI clients for sure, especially your existing user base. But the interaction is almost owned by that AI client. So if I'm in ChatGPT and I want to use Asana's MCP server, if I don't have the MCP apps extension enabled, if I'm just using the raw text tools, I can say stuff like fetch me my task for the day, summarize what I need to do for the day, and that's fun. But all of that interaction is owned by ChatGPT's agent, right? It gets to decide what to do with the data, how it presents that data. When you're showing your own user interface there, something awesome happens, and it's, hey, I see Asana's logo for one. So, okay, executives are pretty happy about that. I can also see this user interface that feels more like made for me and akin for me. And soon we may get to a point where these user interfaces are dynamically generated based on the kind of prompt that you have all over MCP apps. So that could be interesting. But it's almost like a user interface that's built for me. And now I can associate this interaction with that end app and not so much just the data and the interaction with the agent in the client. So that's super exciting. So major distribution channels open up when you expose your UI interfaces in these clients, especially as we turn on discovery for these clients. So if you're interested in, let's say, getting access to the over billion weekly active users in ChatGPT and Claude, for example, and it can actually recommend, hey, I want a booking. I want to book a trip. It'll actually recommend 5 apps like booking.com. You can actually click it one time and get access to this user interface to go book stuff within ChatGPT and Claude. So huge potential for like an e-commerce company, especially, to dive in there and get access to these users. It's just a cooler experience for the users in ChatGPT and Claude. So I don't know, formalizing it is cool. It's been around for a little bit now, but it's nice that it's formal.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you, especially for the reasons that you spoke about, which is, um, you can retain your brand experience across different surfaces, not just your products, but also in the other surfaces that your customers are using your product from. Number two, you can just improve the overall user experience rather than the user reading a wall of text. He can see appropriate chats that you think are best for your customers. See, you own the user experience and you're not just relying on the Claudes and chat GPTs to do whatever they think they should do. Um, and the third, of course, you can offer additional secure controls without them having to leave the Claudes and chat GPTs, like the booking example that you spoke about. It may not be just a link that the user will click on. You can complete the entire booking experience right within the chat where they started. So yeah, I mean, I definitely think more and more MCP server developers should think of offering first class support for the MCP apps as well. And yeah, good job on MCP spec formalizing it finally. Like I said earlier, I think this MCP spec is all about formalizing good things and kind of slowly deprecating the ones that are not used as much, so that it can serve as a really strong baseline for the upcoming spec enhancements. So yeah, I mean, I really think this is one of the biggest MCP spec releases. Okay, we are
I,
up on, yeah, sorry, Sahil.
yeah, I think Prathamesh has really covered on the MCP server side, but I mean just an addition, or you can say my 2 cents on
Yeah,
for the client people. If you are the
yeah,
client developer, um, uh, major SDK now have the support of cross-app access, so you don't have to reinvent the bill by yourself. If you are
yeah,
the client who wants to, you know, do all the ID jack flow and access token, we make your job easier because we have contributed that part to MCP client. So that's a
hey,
good thing.
this is fantastic, Sohail. Is it in Golang SDK also?
Well, I think if I can remember it correctly, it was definitely for TypeScript. Golang is also there. I think very soon the support will be also added for the Python. But yeah, the
Yeah,
major SDKs that are, they already have the client as well.
yeah,
That support for the Excel. Yeah,
yeah. But this is really exciting news, right? Because we are built completely on Golang for
hmm
our own product, and yeah, we rely a lot on official MCP SDK.
yeah.
So yeah, it's great to hear. But there are a lot of other questions that are coming in. So what I'll do is, in the interest of time, we can put together detailed answers for most of these questions. Either do a part 2 of the Q&A video, or we can do an offline blog. So it's so we can answer to most of these questions, if not all. But yeah, thank you so much, Sohail. Thank you so much, Prathamesh, for joining me and then talking about XAA, talking about MCP spec, the really, really good, positive changes that are coming in. I'm so happy that we partner with both Okta and MCPJam as we continue this evolution of making things easier for MCP server developers as much as possible. So yeah, thanks so much for having me here.
Yeah, super exciting. Thanks for having me, and really excited for this spec release. I think we're moving in an awesome direction. So, yeah, if you're looking for ways to migrate, I think you'll find some materials. I think Ravi will be sharing some. Yeah, feel free to look at the candidate and change logs, and that's a great place to start and see where we go from there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right. Yeah, Sohail.
yeah, thanks Troy for putting all of this together. And yes, I think the direction is very solid. MCP spec is getting updated. We are adding much more richer support to that. So yeah, let's all together make this thing well, I would say.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us, Ravi.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. And everyone, whoever tuned in, thank you so much for tuning in and asking your questions. We'll definitely make sure to answer your questions in detail and then send a follow-up response so that your questions are answered thoroughly. And if you do have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to Sohail or Pratmesh or me on LinkedIn. We'll put our LinkedIn descriptions here. Yeah, we're more than happy to help you. We're more than happy to learn from you. And yeah, and thanks so much. Keep coding. Bye.
See you guys.